Marcus Reynolds sits in his $3,000 designer suit, watching the airline staff frantically trying to reboot their systems across all terminals. Their panicked eyes occasionally dart to him, the man they'd humiliated hours earlier. His phone buzzes, another desperate call from the airline's president. Marcus smiles and declines it. Before I dive into how this powerful story unfolded, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed discrimination, and subscribe to see more stories of justice served. Now let's rewind to see exactly how Marcus Reynolds went from being denied his rightful seat to bringing an entire airline to its knees. Marcus Reynolds tightened his Italian silk tie as he walked through Atlanta International Airport. At 42, the CEO of CyberShield Solutions had built his company into a cybersecurity powerhouse that protected everything from government databases to banking networks. Today's meeting in Boston could expand their portfolio even further, if he arrived looking every bit the successful executive he was. He'd paid for his own first-class ticket despite his company's allowance covering it. Marcus believed in experiencing his success, not just accumulating it. His charcoal Armani suit and handcrafted leather briefcase weren't just status symbols. They were armor in a world that often judged him instantly and harshly. The moment he approached the premium check-in counter, he sensed the shift. The attendant, a white woman in her 50s with a nameplate reading Tracy Williams, stiffened. Her welcoming smile faltered, replaced by a thin-lipped assessment. "Reservation name?" she asked, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with the previous passenger. "Marcus Reynolds. I have a first-class ticket to Boston." He slid his ID and phone with the digital ticket across the counter. Tracy tapped at her keyboard with exaggerated focus. "I'm seeing some irregularities with your reservation, sir." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Irregularities? I booked this flight months ago. I'm Platinum Elite status." He gestured to the status indicator on his digital boarding pass. "Yes, I can see that," she replied, not looking at his phone. "The system is flagging something. Please step aside while I assist other passengers." For 20 minutes, Marcus watched as Tracy processed other travelers, most of them white, with swift efficiency. He observed 3 passengers with lower status levels than his being upgraded to first class with Tracy's cheerful, "You're in luck today." When he finally stepped back to the counter, Tracy's expression hardened. "I'm afraid first class is overbooked today. We'll need to move you to economy." Marcus pulled out his phone. "That's not possible. I confirmed my seat yesterday. See? Seat 3A is assigned to me." "The computer system shows otherwise, sir." Her emphasis on "sir" carried an unmistakable edge. "Economy is the best we can do." From nearby, a middle-aged white businessman in golf attire remarked to his companion just loudly enough to be heard. "Those seats are expensive for a reason. Some people just don't understand how the system works." Marcus noticed Tracy's subtle nod toward a security officer, who began drifting in their direction. The message was clear: cause a scene and face consequences beyond a downgraded seat. 20 years of navigating corporate America had taught Marcus when to pick his battles. Making a scene wouldn't get him to Boston any faster or in better condition for his meeting. Instead, he would remember everything: names, times, details. His father had always told him, "Son, in this world your memory might be your most powerful weapon." "Fine," Marcus said, keeping his voice level. "Economy will have to do." Tracy's relief was palpable as she printed his new boarding pass for a middle seat in row 34, almost the back of the plane. "Boarding begins in 30 minutes, she said, already turning to the next customer with a renewed smile. As Marcus moved away, he caught her whispering to another agent while glancing in his direction. His jaw tightened, but he kept walking. What Tracy and Atlas Airways didn't know was that they hadn't just inconvenienced a passenger. They'd challenged a man whose company specialized in finding and exploiting vulnerabilities in systems, both technological and human. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a note of Tracy's full name, the time, and every detail of the interaction. CyberShield hadn't become an industry leader by accident. It was built on Marcus's ability to analyze weaknesses, create solutions, and above all, his strategic patience. While others saw his patience as submission, Marcus knew better. He was simply gathering data before executing a response. He caught his reflection in a window, impeccably dressed in his $3,000 suit with nowhere appropriate to sit. The irony wasn't lost on him, nor was the familiar sting of being judged by his skin rather than his success. As he headed toward his gate, Marcus recalled his father's voice. "They'll always see your skin before your suit, son. The question is, what will you do when they show you who they really are?" Today, Atlas Airways had shown him exactly who they were. And soon, Marcus would show them exactly who he was. The economy cabin of Flight AT-1428 to Boston felt like a calculated insult after the spacious first-class seat Marcus had paid for. Wedged into a middle seat between a heavy-set man who claimed both armrests and a college student whose headphones leaked thumping bass, Marcus attempted to maintain his dignity. His 6'2" frame, usually commanding in boardrooms, now folded uncomfortably as his knees pressed against the seat in front. The passenger ahead reclined immediately after takeoff, further reducing his space to the bare minimum. "Excuse me," Marcus called to a passing flight attendant with Heather on her name tag. "Could I get some water, please?" She glanced at him, briefly. "I'll be back with the beverage cart soon." She continued down the aisle, stopping to chat warmly with other passengers. 20 minutes passed. The beverage service began at the front of the cabin. Marcus watched as Heather attentively served other passengers, refilling drinks and offering extra snacks. When she finally reached his row, she placed a half-filled plastic cup of water on his tray without a word and moved on before he could request anything else. From the corner of his eye, Marcus spotted Congressman Walter Phillips in first class, the very man he'd hoped to impress during this trip. The congressman sat comfortably enjoying a pre-flight cocktail, oblivious to Marcus's predicament. Phillips chaired the Technology Oversight Committee, which would soon decide on contractors for a billion-dollar cybersecurity initiative. CyberShield was shortlisted, but securing Phillips' support would virtually guarantee their selection. That opportunity now seemed to be slipping away with each passing minute. After an hour without water in the stuffy cabin, Marcus pressed his call button. When no one responded after 5 minutes, he pressed it again. Suddenly, the cabin PA system crackled. "Sir, in seat 34B, repeatedly pressing your call button is disruptive to the flight crew. Please be patient." Faces turned to stare. The public reprimand burned like a physical slap. Marcus saw Congressman Phillips glance back curiously before returning to his comfortable conversation with a flight attendant who refilled his drink without being asked. "That's not right," whispered the college student beside him, looking genuinely concerned. "They're treating you differently." Marcus nodded slightly but said nothing. His focus had shifted. Using the plane's Wi-Fi, he opened his laptop and began working, though not on the presentation he'd planned to review. Instead, he started mapping Atlas Airways' network architecture. As a cybersecurity expert with government clearance, Marcus's company had previously conducted security assessments of several major airline systems. While they hadn't directly worked with Atlas, the industry used similar infrastructure. Within minutes, he identified multiple access points and began documenting alarming vulnerabilities in their passenger management and booking systems. Midway through the flight, Marcus discovered something else. His checked luggage containing critical presentation materials had been accidentally rerouted to Dallas. The flight attendant delivered this news with barely concealed indifference. "These things happen," she said with a shrug. "You can file a claim in Boston." As the flight dragged on, Marcus found himself transported back through similar experiences in his life. The college professor who expressed surprise at his academic excellence, the bank loan officer who required additional verification despite his perfect credit score, the security guards who followed him through high-end stores even when he wore custom suits. He remembered his late father, a hard-working postal worker who had scraped together everything to send Marcus to good schools. "They'll always see your skin before your suit," his father had told him. "Be smarter, not angrier. Intelligence outlasts emotion." By the time Flight AT-1428 began its descent into Boston, Marcus had compiled a comprehensive map of Atlas Airways' digital infrastructure, legitimate information any security professional might analyze. But he also understood precisely how vulnerable their systems were to someone with his expertise. As passengers deplaned, Congressman Phillips passed by without recognition, despite having met Marcus at 2 industry events. The congressman's eyes slid past him as though he were invisible. Just another face in economy class, not the CEO he'd enthusiastically discussed technology policy with months earlier. Heather stood near the exit, thanking passengers for flying Atlas Airways. When Marcus approached, she turned to speak with the captain, her back a clear dismissal. In the terminal, Marcus checked his phone to find an email notification. His premium hotel reservation had encountered an unexpected issue. Just like his first-class seat, it seemed his luxury hotel room had mysteriously become unavailable. The pattern was unmistakable. One isolated incident might be coincidence. This systematic dismantling of his carefully planned trip suggested something more deliberate. Tracy Williams had made calls, ensuring the successful black man in the expensive suit would be put in his place. As he headed toward ground transportation in his rumpled suit, Marcus reflected on his father's wisdom with new understanding. Being smarter meant seeing the bigger picture. And sometimes intelligence required showing others the consequences of their actions in terms they couldn't ignore. Atlas Airways had seen only his skin and not his capabilities. Soon, they would learn what a costly mistake that truly was. Have you ever watched everything you've worked for slip away because someone else decided you didn't deserve it? If you felt that same sting of injustice Marcus is experiencing, comment number 1 below. If you believe he should fight back against this discrimination, hit that like button right now. And if you're wondering what genius move this brilliant CEO is about to make, subscribe so you don't miss any part of this incredible story. Now let's see how deep this discrimination goes and what it costs Marcus. The Harborview Hotel in downtown Boston was a far cry from the luxurious Westbrook Marcus had reserved. Instead of a spacious executive suite with a harbor view perfect for reviewing presentations, he found himself in a cramped standard room overlooking an air conditioning unit. The desk barely fit his laptop. "I'm sorry for the confusion, Mr. Reynolds," the front desk manager had said without making eye contact. "Your original reservation showed payment issues. We have no suites available now." Marcus knew his corporate card had no payment issues. It never had in 8 years. Someone had made a call. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 11:37 p.m. His meeting with Global Secure, a potential $50 million client, started at 9 a.m. Without his presentation materials, he faced the daunting task of recreating everything from memory and cloud backups. He loosened his tie and began working. Sleep wasn't an option. By 4:30 a.m., fueled by overpriced minibar coffee, Marcus had reconstructed a presentation that normally took his team weeks to perfect. It wasn't his best work, but it would have to do. His phone chimed with a text from Congressman Phillips. "Need to cancel our breakfast. Schedule conflict, reschedule soon." The informal meeting, arranged weeks ago, had been Marcus's opportunity to discuss CyberShield's approach to the government cybersecurity initiative. Marcus rubbed his bloodshot eyes. How had the congressman even known he was on that flight? Phillips must have recognized him during the public call button humiliation. Now, instead of discussing technology over Eggs Benedict, the congressman was distancing himself. After a quick shower, Marcus dressed in yesterday's wrinkled suit, the best he could do without his luggage. He arrived at Global Secure's offices, 15 minutes early, hoping to set up and compose himself before the executives arrived. "You're here for the 9 o'clock?" the receptionist asked, her smile fading as she evaluated his appearance. "They're already gathered. Follow me." Walking into the boardroom, Marcus immediately sensed the atmosphere shift. 8 executives in fresh suits exchanged glances as he entered. Jeffrey Walters, Global Secure's CEO, checked his watch pointedly. "Mr. Reynolds, we were beginning to wonder." "I'm 15 minutes early," Marcus said, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the obvious slight. "Our watches must differ," Walters replied, generating chuckles around the table. "You look traveled. Rough night?" "Nothing unusual," Marcus said, connecting his laptop to the projector. "Shall we begin?" For the next hour, Marcus delivered his presentation flawlessly despite the circumstances. He outlined CyberShield's innovative approach to protecting Global Secure's financial infrastructure, demonstrating why his company had become an industry leader. Yet he couldn't miss the skeptical glances, the whispers behind hands, the lack of engaged questions that typically characterize successful pitches. Something had poisoned the well before he'd even arrived. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds," Walters said when Marcus concluded. "We appreciate your effort today. We'll be in touch after reviewing all candidates." The dismissal was clear. As Marcus packed up his laptop, he overheard Walters murmuring to his CFO, "I'm not sure about stability there. We need reliable partners." In the elevator down, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Alicia Chen, his COO. "Global Secure signing with NetGuard. Heard through back channels. What happened?" NetGuard, their biggest competitor with an objectively inferior security solution. The contract was lost before he'd even stepped into the room. Outside, sitting on a park bench with Boston's financial district towering around him, Marcus made calls. His hotel had received a call from Tracy at Atlas Airways about a difficult passenger. The restaurant where he was supposed to meet Congressman Phillips confirmed cancellation due to concerns about the other party. Even the car service had mysteriously overbooked after his flight landed. His phone rang. James Henderson, a board member at CyberShield. "Marcus, what's happening in Boston? I'm getting calls from investors concerned about stability issues. At executive level, stock dropped 3% this morning on rumors." The systematic dismantling of his professional reputation was spreading like a virus. One airline employee's prejudice had cascaded into a threat to everything he'd built. "James, I need to cut this trip short. I'm heading back to Atlanta tonight. We need an emergency executive meeting tomorrow morning." "That's serious?" "More than you know," Marcus replied, watching a United Airlines plane soar overhead. "This isn't just about one contract anymore." As he ended the call, another notification appeared. A news alert about Atlas Airways announcing a major technology upgrade to their booking and customer service systems, a contract CyberShield had bid on months ago but never heard back about. The pieces connected in Marcus's mind. Atlas hadn't just denied him a seat, they'd denied his company a contract, likely giving it to a competitor with less qualified security provisions. Now their discrimination had cost him additional business and threatened his company's reputation. This wasn't just personal anymore, it was existential. If one prejudiced airline employee could threaten everything he'd built, the system itself needed correction. Marcus opened his laptop again. This time accessing a secure server where CyberShield stored detailed analyses of potential clients, including Atlas Airways. The security audit they'd conducted during the proposal process contained information the airline wouldn't want public: critical vulnerabilities, negligent practices, outdated systems protecting sensitive passenger data. "They think they've seen a pushover," Marcus whispered to himself. "Time to show them who they're really dealing with." He booked a flight back to Atlanta, deliberately not with Atlas, and began formulating a plan that would make Tracy Williams and Atlas Airways regret the moment they decided to judge him by his skin rather than his credentials. But first, he needed his team. Because while revenge might be a dish best served cold, justice required precise calculation, and Marcus Reynolds intended to deliver it with mathematical precision. What would you do if you were in Marcus's position? Would you fight back or walk away? And how far would you go to right this wrong? The real question is, what happens when they underestimate the very man whose expertise could bring their entire operation to its knees? Let's find out. CyberShield's glass and steel headquarters in Atlanta's tech corridor pulsed with unusual energy for a Saturday morning. Marcus had called an emergency meeting of his executive team, and the tension in the conference room was palpable as he recounted the events of the past 48 hours. "So that's where we stand," Marcus concluded. "Atlas Airways discrimination has cost us the Global Secure contract, potentially damaged our reputation with government contacts, and revealed a troubling reality. Despite all our success, we're still vulnerable to the most basic prejudice." Alicia Chen, his COO and right hand for 7 years, was the first to respond. "This is textbook discrimination. We should sue them into next century." Her legal background made litigation her first instinct. "I agree it's actionable," said Lawrence, Washington, CyberShield's legal counsel. But a lawsuit means months, possibly years of proceedings, media coverage focusing on race rather than our technology, and unpredictable outcomes. Not to mention the perception problem, added Zoe Ramirez, head of marketing. Tech companies that sue often get labeled as litigious rather than innovative, regardless of merit. Marcus nodded, having already considered these angles. This isn't just about one flight or one contract. This is about a system that allows someone like Tracy Williams to wield discriminatory power without consequences. He turned to the projection screen and pulled up a file labeled Atlas Airways Security Assessment. 3 months ago, we bid on their security infrastructure upgrade. They went with a cheaper solution from TechCore Systems. He scrolled through the document. Our assessment identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in their passenger data systems, payment processing, and booking architecture. Jamal Washington, Marcus's chief security officer, leaned forward. Those recommendations would have cost them $5 million to implement properly. TechCore underbid us by half. And delivered half the security, Marcus added. Atlas Airways is currently operating with multiple exploitable vulnerabilities that put customer data and business operations at risk. This isn't speculation, it's documented fact. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Lawrence asked carefully. Marcus shook his head. I'm not suggesting anything illegal. I'm proposing we approach this from 2 angles: business and ethical. He stood and began outlining his strategy on the whiteboard. First, the business approach. We document the discrimination case properly and present it to Atlas Airways executive leadership, offering them a chance to make amends through a comprehensive security partnership. And if they refuse? Alicia asked, though her knowing smile suggested she already anticipated the answer. Then we move to the ethical approach, Marcus continued. As cybersecurity professionals, we have an obligation to report critical vulnerabilities, especially when they potentially affect millions of travelers. Jamal caught on immediately. A detailed disclosure of their security failures to industry watchdogs and regulatory bodies. Precisely, Marcus confirmed. Not as retaliation, but as professional responsibility. If they won't protect their customers voluntarily, perhaps public scrutiny will motivate them. He returned to his seat at the head of the table. But before either approach, we need irrefutable documentation. Jamal, I want our best team conducting a deep analysis of Atlas Airways' current vulnerabilities, within legal boundaries of public-facing systems only. Jamal nodded. I'll assemble the team immediately. We'll set up in the secure lab. Zoe, I need everything you can find on Atlas's corporate culture, leadership, and any previous discrimination complaints. On it, she replied, already typing. Fortson. Alicia, prepare both the business proposal and the ethics disclosure. Lawrence, ensure everything we do stays within legal boundaries. As the team dispersed to their assignments, Marcus remained at the conference table, studying the security assessment. He noticed a name he'd overlooked before. Richard Whitfield, Atlas Airways CEO, had personally rejected CyberShield's security recommendations as excessive and unnecessary expense. A quick search revealed Whitfield's background: old money, exclusive schools, and a corporate history marked by cost-cutting and outsourcing. Further digging uncovered 3 settled discrimination suits during his tenure, all with confidentiality agreements. By evening, Jamal's team had established a secure war room in the building's most protected area. 6 security analysts, deliberately selected to represent the diversity that made CyberShield stronger, worked with focused intensity. We're finding even more vulnerabilities than we documented 3 months ago, Jamal reported. Their recent upgrade actually introduced new security holes. It's borderline negligent. Just then, Marcus's secure email pinged with an anonymous message. Atlas Airways employee here. What happened to you happens daily. Attached is our customer service protocol. See section 4.3 on profile assessment. They train us to do this. The attached document contained explicit instructions for treating passengers differently, based on subtle coding language that thinly disguised racial profiling. We have everything we need, Marcus told his team after reviewing the evidence. Tomorrow we approach Atlas Airways as concerned security professionals. They'll have one chance to make this right. He looked around at the diverse, brilliant team he'd built, people chosen for their minds, not their appearances. And if they refuse, we'll show them exactly why discrimination isn't just morally wrong. It's bad business. As the team worked, into the night, Marcus received a text from Congressman Phillips. Heard about global secure decision, unfortunate. Atlas CEO Whitfield is golfing buddy. Said you seemed difficult. Committee decision on contracts coming next week. The message confirmed what Marcus already suspected. The old boy's network was closing ranks. His company's future, and the livelihoods of his 300 employees, was being threatened because one airline couldn't see past the color of his skin. Jamal, Marcus called across the war room, prepare operation system integrity as a contingency. If our meeting fails, we move to plan B. How far do we go? Jamal asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. Far enough to be heard, not so far as to cause real damage. This is about justice, not revenge. But as he said it, Marcus wondered if there was truly a difference anymore. Either way, Atlas Airways was about to learn an expensive lesson about judging a man by his appearance, rather than his abilities. The Atlas Airways corporate headquarters in downtown Atlanta projected power through architecture, all steel, glass, and towering presence. Marcus Reynolds arrived precisely at 10 in the morning for his scheduled meeting with the executive team, dressed in a bespoke navy suit that made his college football linebacker build even more imposing. The security desk created the first obstacle. ID, please, the guard said without looking up. When Marcus presented his identification, the guard frowned. You're not on my list. Check again, Marcus replied calmly. Marcus Reynolds, Cyber Shield Solutions, meeting with Richard Whitfield at 10. After several calls and 15 minutes of waiting, Marcus received a temporary visitor badge while watching white executives walk through with casual nods to security. You'll need to go through the scanner, the guard added, pointing to a metal detector that hadn't been used for anyone else. Marcus complied silently, documenting every discrepancy in treatment. This wasn't pettiness. It was evidence. In the lobby, a receptionist informed him, Mr. Whitfield is running behind schedule. He asks that you wait. 45 minutes passed, with Marcus sitting under the watchful eye of security, while routine business continued around him. He recognized the tactic, a power move designed to diminish his importance and test his temperament. Finally, an assistant appeared. Mr. Whitfield, we'll see you now. Instead of the executive boardroom, Marcus was led to a small side office with uncomfortable chairs and no windows. 5 men in expensive suits and 1 Asian woman sat waiting, with Richard Whitfield, silver-haired and tanned from recent golfing, at the head. Mr. Reynolds, Whitfield said without standing, we've squeezed you into a busy schedule. I understand you have concerns about your recent flight experience. The dismissive tone set the stage. This wasn't a meeting between equals, but a perfunctory address of a complaint they'd already decided to dismiss. My concerns extend beyond a single flight, Marcus replied, maintaining eye contact with Whitfield. I'm here regarding a pattern of discrimination that affected not just me personally, but has business implications for both our companies. He opened his briefcase and distributed folders to everyone present. This documents the events beginning, with my denied first-class seat despite confirmation, continuing through the systematic mistreatment during the flight, and culminating in what appears to be intentional sabotage of business relationships. Whitfield barely glanced at the folder. These things happen in travel, overbooking, system errors. There was no overbooking, Marcus interrupted, pulling out flight manifests his team had obtained. First class had 3 empty seats on that flight. Your employee Tracy Williams deliberately denied me my confirmed seat while upgrading white passengers with lower status. Bradley Thompson, Atlas Airways COO, leaned forward. That's a serious accusation without proof of intent. Page 3 contains witness statements, Marcus countered. Page 4 shows the pattern of calls made by Ms. Williams after the incident to my hotel, restaurants, and potentially business contacts. Marcus turned to a new document. More concerning is page 5, your company's customer service protocol with section 4.3 highlighted, instructing employees to make profile assessments that amount to racial profiling. The Asian woman, who hadn't been introduced and hadn't spoken, looked uncomfortable. Marcus noted she was the only person actually reading the documents. As a result of these actions, Marcus continued, my company lost a $50 million contract with Global Secure, and our government contract opportunities have been jeopardized through your connection with Congressman Phillips. Whitfield's face tightened at the mention of Phillips, confirmation of the connection. Beyond the discrimination issue is a security concern. Marcus opened his laptop and turned it toward the executives. This is the security assessment we provided during our bid for your systems upgrade 3 months ago. You rejected our recommendations as unnecessary expense and went with TechCore's inferior solution. He clicked through slides showing vulnerability points in Atlas's systems. Our current analysis shows your passenger data, payment systems, and operational infrastructure remain critically vulnerable. As cybersecurity professionals, we're ethically obligated to report these vulnerabilities if they're not addressed. Bradley Thompson's face reddened. That sounds like a threat. It's a professional obligation, Marcus corrected. Just as your obligation as executives is to ensure your company doesn't engage in discriminatory practices or operate with negligent security standards. He closed his laptop. CyberShield proposes a comprehensive solution, a formal apology, sensitivity training, implementation for customer-facing staff, and a security partnership to address your vulnerabilities properly. In return, we'll consider the matter resolved. Whitfield leaned back, his expression calculating. And if we consider the matter already resolved? You received inconvenient service. It happens. This wasn't inconvenience, Marcus said, his voice steady. This was discrimination that damaged my business. If unaddressed, we'll file formal complaints with the FAA, EEOC, and relevant congressional committees. Additionally, we'll submit our security findings to industry watchdogs as required by professional ethics. You're overreacting to a customer service issue, Whitfield said dismissively. We can offer a $5,000 travel voucher to compensate for any inconvenience. The insulting offer hung in the air. Marcus gathered his materials unhurriedly. I'll need your response to our actual proposal by tomorrow at noon, he said, standing. My team is prepared to move forward either way. As he reached the door, Whitfield spoke to his legal counsel just loudly enough to be heard. Get me everything. On him. Everyone has skeletons. Marcus turned. Unlike your security systems, Mr. Whitfield, mine are actually impenetrable. Good day. He walked out with his head high, knowing the threat had just confirmed everything. Atlas Airways leadership was cut from the same cloth as Tracy Williams. Discrimination wasn't a bug in their system, but a feature. Back at CyberShield headquarters, his executive team waited anxiously. How did it go? Alicia asked. Exactly as expected, Marcus replied. They see this as a PR issue to manage, not a problem to solve. Whitfield all but confirmed he's been calling his connection Congressman Phillips. What's our next move? Jamal asked. Marcus took a deep breath, weighing the consequences one final time. His company, his employees, his reputation, all were at stake. But so too was a principle larger than himself, that no one should face systematic prejudice without recourse. Jamal, initiate Operation System Integrity, he said finally. It's time to demonstrate why cybersecurity should never be an unnecessary expense, and why discrimination is always a costly mistake. What would you do if someone tried to destroy everything you've built with a single act of prejudice? Would you walk away or fight back with every tool at your disposal? Comment number 1, if you believe Marcus is justified in his response. Or, number 2, if you think he should find another way. Like this video if you've ever had to stand up against discrimination, and subscribe to see whether justice will prevail in this incredible true story. Now, let's watch as Marcus assembles his strategic response. Deep within CyberShield's headquarters, behind 3 layers of biometric security, Marcus's elite team transformed a conference room into a command center. Monitors displayed complex network maps, code repositories, and real-time system analyses. This wasn't just any team. This was Fire Team Alpha, CyberShield's most skilled security specialists. Everyone clear on parameters? Marcus asked, surveying the focused professionals around him. Jamal Washington, his chief security officer, nodded. Crystal clear. This is Operation System Integrity, a controlled demonstration of vulnerabilities, with zero permanent damage. The team represented the diversity that made CyberShield stronger. Jamal's network architecture expertise, Zoe Ramirez's social engineering brilliance, Miguel Cortez's systems design mastery, and Layla Patel's ethical hacking championships. Each had faced discrimination in their careers. Each understood the stakes went beyond one CEO's humiliation. Atlas Airways rejected our security recommendations to save money, Marcus continued. Now they'll learn why that decision, like their discrimination, was costly. But remember our boundaries. Passenger safety systems are absolutely off limits and we leave no permanent damage. He displayed the network architecture map his team had legally assembled through public-facing systems analysis. Atlas is running critically outdated security protocols on their booking and customer management systems. Their payment processing has vulnerabilities that could expose customer data. Their backup systems aren't properly configured. It's practically negligent, Layla commented, analyzing the code structures. They implemented half our recommendations incorrectly and ignored the rest. We're going to focus exclusively on their revenue systems, Marcus clarified. Nothing that affects flight operations or safety. Our goal is to demonstrate vulnerabilities through a controlled service disruption, not cause chaos. Jamal pulled up a more detailed schematic. We've identified 3 primary vulnerability points: their main booking engine, payment processing gateway, and customer authentication system. A coordinated approach will create system bottlenecks without damaging infrastructure. For hours, the team mapped every aspect of the operation. They created specialized tools to exploit the vulnerabilities without leaving permanent backdoors. Miguel developed code that would create processing backlogs in the booking system. Nothing destructive, just efficiency-killing bottlenecks that would demonstrate the vulnerabilities without causing data damage. Around midnight, Jamal made a surprising discovery. Boss, they've had multiple data breaches they never disclosed. He turned a monitor toward Marcus. Customer payment information was exposed 3 times in the past year. They paid ransom quietly, instead of fixing the underlying issues. That violates federal disclosure requirements, Marcus noted, his determination strengthening. Add it to the documentation package. As the team worked through the night, Marcus received an anonymous email from an Atlas Airways whistleblower. Internal documents showing the airline had been cited by federal agencies for security deficiencies, but had lobbied to keep the reports classified under transportation security concerns. Marcus stepped away to call a trusted contact at the FBI's cybercrime division. Just hypothetically, he asked after pleasantries, if an airline ignored federal security directives regarding customer data protection, what would be the appropriate reporting procedure? Hypothetically, his contact replied carefully, such negligence would require immediate disclosure to the Transportation Security Administration and Federal Trade Commission. Failure to report would compound the violations substantially. This confirmed Marcus's approach. Before executing Operation System Integrity, they would prepare comprehensive documentation of all vulnerabilities and previous breaches, creating an unimpeachable paper trail showing they were acting as concerned security professionals, not vindictive hackers. By dawn, the plan was complete. A precisely coordinated demonstration of Atlas Airways' vulnerabilities that would affect only their revenue generation systems, accompanied by detailed disclosure of existing security failures. The operation would begin during low traffic hours to minimize traveler disruption while maximizing the airline's awareness of its vulnerabilities. Before leaving the command center to rest briefly, Marcus visited his mentor, retired Judge Eleanor Williams, at her home in the historic district. "You're planning something consequential," she observed, serving tea on her veranda. At 76, little escaped her notice. Marcus explained the situation without technical details. Eleanor had been one of the first black federal judges in the region and understood discrimination's subtle and overt forms better than most. "When I was appointed," Eleanor said, sipping her tea, "they tried everything to make me quit. Changed my office to a converted closet. Lost my case files. Even had my name misspelled on the door for 6 months as Ellen despite corrections." She fixed Marcus with a penetrating gaze. The question isn't whether you should respond, but how you respond. Justice without wisdom becomes mere vengeance. I'm not seeking revenge, Marcus insisted. I'm seeking correction of a systemic problem. Then ensure your correction teaches rather than punishes, she advised. The best lesson changes behavior permanently by creating understanding, not just fear of consequences. As Marcus left, his phone rang, Congressman Phillips himself. Reynolds, the congressman began without preamble, I've heard concerning things about your government contract application. Certain parties have expressed concerns about your company's stability. The message was clear. Back off from Atlas or lose everything. Thank you for your transparency, Congressman, Marcus replied evenly. I look forward to addressing any legitimate concerns through proper channels. That night, as his team finalized preparations, Marcus questioned his decision one last time. Was he risking 300 jobs to address one man's wounded pride? But looking at the documentation of Atlas's discriminatory practices affecting countless travelers, he knew this went beyond personal vindication. This wasn't about a denied seat. It was about challenging a system that allowed privilege to override merit, prejudice to override fairness. It was about changing behavior through the only language some corporations understood, the bottom line. For you, Dad, he whispered, touching the photo of his father he kept in his wallet. The man who'd taught him that dignity wasn't granted by others but maintained by oneself, even in the face of injustice. At midnight, Marcus gave the final authorization for Operation System Integrity, scheduled to begin at 4 a.m., the lowest traffic period for Atlas Airways booking systems. The question remained, would this be remembered as a justified stand against discrimination, or would it simply reinforce stereotypes about angry black men? The answer would depend not just on what they did, but how they did it. At precisely 4 a.m. Eastern Time, when online bookings were at their minimum and night shift IT staff were at their least alert, Operation System Integrity commenced. In CyberShield's command center, Marcus and his team executed their carefully orchestrated plan. Initiating Phase 1, Jamal announced, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Miguel deployed the first code package, a specialized program that identified and exploited the security holes in Atlas Airways' booking system architecture. Unlike malicious attacks, this code created no backdoors and stole no data. Instead, it simply exposed the system's critical vulnerabilities by creating processing bottlenecks. Vulnerabilities confirmed in primary booking engine, Layla reported, monitoring the system's response. They're running critically outdated security protocols, just as we predicted. On the main screen, they watched as Atlas Airways booking system began showing the first symptoms, error messages appearing for new reservation attempts, processing times extending from seconds to minutes. Phase 2, Marcus directed at 4:15 a.m. Zoe implemented the second stage, a program that revealed how Atlas's backup systems had been misconfigured during their budget implementation of security recommendations. Their failover systems are attempting to activate, she noted, but they're failing exactly as we documented in our security assessment. By 4:30 a.m., the airline's entire online booking platform had slowed to a crawl. No data was being damaged or stolen, but new reservations couldn't be processed, and existing reservations were inaccessible. Simultaneously, Jamal executed the third phase, the anonymous release of Atlas's security audit to industry watchdog sites and technology journalists. The documentation clearly showed that Atlas had been warned about these vulnerabilities months earlier, but had chosen to ignore them to save money. ET response detected, Miguel reported. They're trying standard troubleshooting protocols. They think it's routine server issues. Marcus nodded. This was expected. Atlas's technology team would initially misdiagnose the problem because they lacked understanding of their own security vulnerabilities. Exactly the point the operation aimed to demonstrate. As dawn approached, the situation escalated according to plan. Call centers began reporting inability to process bookings. Airport. Terminal agents found their systems responding with increasing sluggishness. The slowdown cascaded through interconnected systems, affecting only revenue generation. not safety or operations for existing flights. They're attempting to reboot primary servers, Layla noted at 6 a.m. It won't help because they don't understand the underlying vulnerabilities. On a secondary monitor, they watched Atlas's stock price as markets opened. Within 15 minutes of trading, investors reacted to news of the booking system failure, driving the price down 3% initially. Tracy Williams has arrived at her terminal in Atlanta, Zoe reported, monitoring security cameras through legal public feeds. She's being instructed to process bookings manually. She looks stressed. Marcus felt no satisfaction at this, only resolution. This wasn't about Tracy personally anymore, but about the system that empowered her discrimination without accountability. By 8 a.m., the operation had achieved its objectives. Atlas Airways' booking system had been effectively non-functional for 4 hours. No customer data had been compromised, no flights delayed, no safety systems affected, but millions in immediate revenue had been lost, and their stock was now down 7% and falling. Phase 4, Marcus directed. This was the most critical phase, the anonymous delivery of a comprehensive security report to Atlas Airways board members, bypassing the executives who had dismissed their concerns. The report detailed exactly how their systems had been compromised, which vulnerabilities had been exploited, and most importantly, how to fix them properly. Delivered to all 12 board members, Jamal confirmed. By 9 a.m., Atlas Airways had declared an IT emergency and called in external security consultants, the same ones who had implemented their inadequate solutions previously. Media reports began circulating about the airline's massive system failure and potential customer data vulnerability. They've called an emergency board meeting for noon, Zoe reported, monitoring communications. At 10:30 a.m., Marcus's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Reynolds," he answered. "Mr. Reynolds, this is David Chen, Chief Technology Officer at Atlas Airways." The man sounded desperate. "We're experiencing a significant system event that bears similarities to vulnerabilities your company identified in your proposal. We're wondering if your team might be available for emergency consultation." Marcus kept his voice neutral. "That's an unexpected call, Mr. Chen, especially given your CEO's position yesterday that our security recommendations were unnecessary. That position has been reconsidered in light of current circumstances," Chen replied carefully. "We're prepared to offer a significant consulting fee for immediate assistance." "I'll need to consult with my team," Marcus said. "In the meantime, I suggest having your CEO review the comprehensive security report that should have arrived in your board members' emails this morning. It contains the information you need." As he ended the call, Marcus turned to his team. "Deactivate all protocols. The demonstration is complete." Within minutes, the programs that had exposed Atlas's vulnerabilities self-terminated, leaving no traces behind. As designed, the airline systems would gradually return to normal operation, but with logged evidence of their security failures that couldn't be erased or denied. "Operation complete," Jamal confirmed. "Clean execution across all phases." Marcus nodded. "Now we wait." The true test would come next, not in the technical response, but in the human one. Would Atlas Airways learn from this demonstration, or would they simply patch the symptoms while ignoring the disease? By noon, the impact of Operation System Integrity had cascaded far beyond what even Marcus had anticipated. Atlas Airways' booking system remained offline across all platforms, with skeleton crews processing reservations manually at airports nationwide. The airline's stock had plummeted 15%, erasing over $3 billion in market value in a single morning. In CyberShield's command center, the team monitored the fallout while maintaining their cover of normal business operations. "Financial impact exceeding $20 million in direct revenue loss," Alicia reported. "They've had to rebook passengers on competitor airlines at premium rates." News channels displayed footage of chaos at major airports, long lines of frustrated travelers, overwhelmed gate agents, and harried executives making hurried statements about temporary technical difficulties. At Atlanta International, where it had all begun, cameras caught Tracy Williams being berated by angry customers as she struggled with paper boarding passes. AP is reporting that the Department of Transportation has launched an emergency investigation, Zoe noted, scrolling through news feeds. Concerns about passenger data security triggered federal involvement. Marcus had anticipated regulatory interest, but not this quickly. The operation had exposed more systemic failures than they'd initially targeted. At 1:30 p.m., the real breakthrough came when an anonymous employee leaked internal Atlas communications to technology journalists, communications showing executives had repeatedly ignored security warnings from their own IT staff to cut costs. "This wasn't us," Jamal confirmed after checking. "Looks like actual Atlas employees are speaking out." The leak triggered an avalanche of revelations. 3 former Atlas IT managers came forward with documented evidence of being fired after raising security concerns. Customer service representatives shared the discriminatory profile assessment guidelines that Marcus had confronted the executives with. A former HR director revealed multiple discrimination complaints that had been buried through settlements and NDAs. By mid-afternoon, Atlas Airways announced that CEO Richard Whitfield and COO Bradley Thompson had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. The board appointed an interim leadership team and promised full cooperation with all regulatory inquiries. At 3:00 p.m., Marcus issued a carefully worded press release. CyberShield Solutions notes with concern the reported security vulnerabilities at Atlas Airways. As leading cybersecurity experts with experience across the aviation sector, we stand ready to assist in resolving these critical issues to protect consumer data and restore operational integrity. Our team of diverse, industry-leading specialists is available for immediate consultation. The statement positioned CyberShield as a solution without connecting them to the problem, exactly as planned. Congressman Phillips called next. His tone had shifted dramatically from the previous day. "Marcus," he began with forced warmth. "Troubling developments with Atlas. I'm heading a special committee review of airline data security protocols. Your insights would be invaluable. Perhaps we could reschedule that breakfast?" "Happy to serve the public interest, Congressman," Marcus replied evenly. "My assistant will coordinate with your office." The congressman hesitated. "About our previous conversation, I may have received some incomplete information regarding your company. I want to assure you that the committee's contracting decisions are based solely on technical merit." Translation: he was distancing himself from Whitfield and trying to cover his political exposure. "I appreciate your commitment to objectivity," Marcus said, allowing the congressman his dignity while they both recognized the changed power dynamic. As evening approached, Atlas Airways' situation deteriorated further. Their attempt to bring systems back online had failed due to fundamental misunderstanding of the vulnerabilities. Customer service lines were overwhelmed. Competing airlines reported record-breaking single-day bookings. At 7:15 p.m., Marcus's private line rang. Elizabeth Porter, chairwoman of Atlas Airways board. "Mr. Reynolds," she began without preamble, "we find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. Your security assessment from 3 months ago predicted exactly what we're experiencing now. The board is meeting in emergency session and would appreciate your expertise. Discreetly." "My team and I are available," Marcus replied. "However, given recent interactions with your executive team, I'd need certain assurances, such as acknowledgement of the discriminatory treatment I experienced, corrective action for responsible parties, and a comprehensive review of company policies. Additionally, we would require full authority to implement necessary security measures without interference." Porter was silent for a moment. "The board has already voted to terminate several executives, including Mr. Whitfield. As for your personal experience, I can only apologize profoundly. It appears to be part of a pattern we're just beginning to uncover." "Then we have a starting point," Marcus said. "I'll assemble my team for an emergency consultation." As he ended the call, Marcus looked around at the brilliant professionals who had executed this operation flawlessly. The same diverse team that made CyberShield an industry leader precisely because they brought different perspectives to problem solving. "Atlas Airways just learned an expensive lesson about judgment," he told them. "Now let's show them what they missed by choosing discrimination over merit." 1 month later, Marcus Reynolds stood at a podium in Atlas Airways' newly renovated corporate headquarters, addressing a room full of executives, technology specialists, and media representatives. Behind him, a screen displayed the logos of Atlas, Airways, and CyberShield Solutions side by side. Today marks the successful completion of our comprehensive security overhaul, Marcus announced. Atlas Airways now operates with industry-leading data protection protocols, ensuring both customer, privacy, and operational stability. The audience included many new faces. Tracy Williams had been among the first employees terminated once Atlas's internal review uncovered her history of discriminatory actions. Richard Whitfield and several other executives had resigned under pressure as evidence of systematic bias and security negligence mounted. In their places sat a notably diverse leadership team headed by new CEO Danielle Washington, a highly respected Black aviation executive recruited from a competing airline. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic. It reflected a fundamental shift in corporate culture following the catastrophic system failure that had cost Atlas over $40 million in direct losses and far more in market value. What began as an unfortunate incident has evolved into an industry-leading partnership, Marcus continued. Our companies have demonstrated that accountability, diversity, and technical excellence create stronger organizations than exclusion and prejudice ever could. He didn't mention the specifics of Operation System Integrity. He didn't need to. The mysterious system vulnerability exposure had become legendary in cybersecurity circles, with many correctly guessing its origins, but none able to prove anything beyond Atlas's own security negligence. The partnership agreement included not just a lucrative contract, but significant equity compensation for the consulting emergency response that had saved Atlas from complete collapse. The funds had allowed CyberShield to establish a scholarship program for minority students pursuing cybersecurity careers. After the presentation, Congressman Phillips approached Marcus with an outstretched hand. Impressive turnaround, Reynolds. The Oversight Committee was particularly impressed with your testimony last week. We're finalizing the government cybersecurity initiative contracts tomorrow, looking very favorable for CyberShield. Glad to hear it, Congressman, Marcus replied. Merit-based decisions benefit everyone. Phillips had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable before moving on. As the reception continued, Marcus stepped away to a quiet corner and opened his wallet. Inside was a worn photograph of his father in his postal worker uniform, the man who had worked double shifts to send his son to the best schools, who had taught him to be smarter, not angrier, when facing discrimination. You were right, Dad, Marcus whispered. But sometimes being smart means showing them exactly who they're underestimating. His reflection was interrupted by a text message from Judge Eleanor Williams. Saw the news conference. Your father would be proud. Not just of your success, but of how you transformed an injustice into progress rather than mere revenge. That distinction mattered. Operation System Integrity hadn't been about hurting Atlas Airways, but about forcing accountability and change. The company was now stronger, more diverse, and more secure. Proof that confronting discrimination created improvement, not just punishment. As Marcus returned to the reception, a flight attendant handed him his new Platinum Elite card, accompanied by a handwritten note from CEO Washington. Your seat will always be ready. Later that evening, as he boarded a flight home, the first-class flight attendant greeted him with genuine respect. Welcome aboard, Mr. Reynolds. The simple professional courtesy, the basic dignity that should have been afforded all along, felt like victory. Not because he needed validation, but because it represented progress for everyone who would come after him. His phone rang just as he was settling into his seat. The caller ID showed another CEO, one who had recently faced similar discrimination. Marcus Reynolds, he answered. Mr. Reynolds, we haven't met, but I could use your advice, the voice began. I experienced something yesterday that I believe you'll understand. Marcus smiled. This was the true resolution, not just addressing his own experience, but creating a pathway for others. By standing up strategically rather than simply accepting injustice, he had transformed a humiliating experience into a force for change. I'm listening, he said, and I think I can help. This story isn't just about one man's revenge, It's about the systemic change that becomes possible when discrimination faces strategic, intelligent resistance. The most powerful response to prejudice isn't anger, but effectiveness. Marcus didn't just reclaim his dignity. He created a world where others might never face what he experienced. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that made you want to stand up and make a difference? What would you have done in Marcus's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you to think differently about fighting injustice, hit that like button and subscribe to see more powerful stories about overcoming adversity. Remember to share this video with someone who needs to hear that intelligence and strategy can be more powerful weapons against discrimination than anger could ever be. Thank you for watching, and remember, your greatest power lies not in how others see you, but in how you choose to respond when they see you wrong. This story teaches us that true justice often requires strategic intelligence rather than emotional reactions. Marcus didn't just seek personal vindication, he created systemic change. When facing discrimination, the most powerful response isn't necessarily immediate confrontation, but thoughtful action that addresses root causes. By using his expertise rather than losing his composure, Marcus transformed an injustice into an opportunity for broader impact. The lesson is clear. Sometimes the most effective way to fight racism isn't to match its ugliness, but to demonstrate your excellence so undeniably that the system itself is forced to change, rather than being defined by how others see you. True power comes from strategically reshaping how systems operate for everyone who follows.